So, hi Eric, thanks for coming. Nice to meet you.
Thanks for having me.
Give us the title of your book and your name, and we'll get started.
Great. My book is An Absent Mind, and my name is Eric Rill.
Great. So, you won the award, the IPPY award. You won the Gold Award for your book?
Correct.
Tell us a little bit about the inspiration behind the book.
Well, I was actually a thriller writer and had done that for several years. And my father was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. And so after he passed away, I was halfway through my next book. And I just felt that I had to put it aside, and I had to write this book.
Most people think that Alzheimer's is one thing, but you wanted to explain and get a little more in depth about it. Could you just expand on that a little more?
Yeah, because most people think Alzheimer's is just loss of memory, when in fact it is the complete shutdown of mind and body, and it's an odyssey that takes place over 8 to 10 years. So I wanted people to understand more about what it really is, and it very often involves violence and aggression and complete loss of time, and so this is really important to me, having gone through what I went through.
Sure.
To let people have a peek as to what really goes on in a family where someone is afflicted with Alzheimer's.
Yeah. Describe the writing process a little more than you just did, but also describe as you were writing the book what you were feeling, what you were going through, and perhaps a little bit more about who you are. Let us know a little bit more about Eric.
Well, I wasn't a writer until about 2004. I actually went to Cornell, where I got a Bachelor of Arts in Political Science, and then UCLA, where I got an MBA, and worked my way up in the hospitality business, where I became president of a large chain. And then after that, started my own company, buying and selling distressed hotels. And then I realized at some point that I was really more a creative type than a corporate type. So I sold my business, and everyone thought I was nuts, and I sold my business, and I moved to the Caribbean, and I started to write. And I wrote thrillers, which I loved at the time, and it gave me a great insight into all kinds of exciting things. I got to interview the former head of the Secret Service, rogue CIA agents. I rode in police helicopters. I saw autopsies. So that was all very exciting stuff. And then until this situation happened with my father, and then I realized that yeah, that's really exciting, but there's something that I should be doing, and I took that on as my mission to educate people about Alzheimer's.
Yeah. So along those lines, in terms of a difference where your book would compare to other books of a similar topic or content, tell me what you feel sets this book apart. And you mentioned something about the thriller aspect. Can you tie that into the way this book was written in terms of?
Well, I mean, I think that one of the things that I have in all of my books is very short chapters.
Okay.
So that the person who's reading is usually at night and they're ready to go to sleep. And if they look ahead and they see, oh my God, there's like 20 pages, they say good night and they put the book away.
Right.
But if there's 3 or 4 pages and you have a hook at the end of the chapter, then they'll read that one and the next one and the next one. Before you know it, you have got them reading a lot more. So that's one thing. But I think this specific book, it is seen through the eyes of the father who has Alzheimer's, his wife, 2 adult children, and the Alzheimer's specialist. And they don't interact in the book themselves. They speak directly to the reader in their own distinct voices.
Interesting.
So each one will have its own chapter. And you know the old story about there's no truth, there's just your version and my version. So very often in the book, you will see the same thing. For instance, Saul, who is the person who has Alzheimer's, is going down to change his will. So there's a chapter where he goes into the lawyer's office and he goes through his whole thing, and then his wife's version in the next chapter is completely different. I mean, they're just not seeing the same thing.
So there's an element of perception being 9/10 reality for all involved.
Right, correct.
Interesting. You mentioned the family aspect. Specifically, though, this was written for your father, for families, for someone or something. Give us some specifics around the target audience, if you will, and then if you want to personalize it, we'll feel free to do that.
Well, I mean, I obviously wrote it because I was affected by my father's situation and his passing.
Yeah.
But for me, the most important thing was just to get the word out about what it is, and to also let people know who are in that situation that it's not a stigma. Alzheimer's today has the same stigma that cancer might have had 15, 20 years ago.
Interesting.
And so people don't want to talk, they don't want to admit that that their loved one has Alzheimer's. And it's very interesting. They did a study and they found out that last year 50,000 people were supposedly had died from Alzheimer's. But they don't put on the death certificate Alzheimer's. Like when Ronald Reagan died, they put pneumonia. Well, we all know that Ronald Reagan had Alzheimer's.
Yes.
So when they really found out what these people who supposedly died from pneumonia or whatever, the number went from 50,000 to over 500,000.
Interesting.
Because there's 5.5 million people in the United States today who have Alzheimer's. So when you take the 5.5 million plus their caregivers, families, friends, that's an enormous amount of people that this is affecting, and it's supposed to double within the next 10 years.
Since the book's been out, can you share a story of a specific impact? Maybe someone who's read the book and came back to you and said, wow, this really changed my views, this really helped me along through the process, or even, this really even helped someone suffering from the disease through the process. Share a story, if you will, or an example of how this affected others.
Well, I think this book is not written for the patient. Although I was invited down to the Alzheimer's International Conference to feature the book, and there were a couple of people who were in the early stages of dementia, and one gentleman said that he wanted to read the book, and I said, well, this is kind of a sad book for you to read, and he said, no, I want to read it. And he said that that helped him.
Wonderful.
But it's really meant to help the people who are going through this with the patient, because at some point the patient does not even know that he's existing, whereas the onus and the burden is on the family to watch their loved one suffer and slide down this steep precipice. So it's really written for them, to show them that it's not a stigma, that so many other people are going through this.
Yeah.
And that they should not be ashamed.
Winning the award, obviously writing the book means a great deal to you, but now you're getting credit above just normally someone saying it's a good book. You've won an award that says this stands out. Tell me what that means to Eric.
Well, first of all, it's obviously gratifying for anyone to win a gold medal. So that's very exciting, and especially when I put so much time and effort into the book. But really for me, what this is about, and when I won it, what I thought of, wow, this can enable me to get a larger audience that can help me with my mission. And my mission, as I said, is to educate people about Alzheimer's. So regardless of whether I end up writing more thrillers or I write more end-of-life books or another book on Alzheimer's, I'm making this my mission, and I have made myself available to Alzheimer's societies, both in the United States, Canada, and abroad, to do whatever I can do to help people that are either going through this or people who may in the future go through this. And in fact, a couple of the societies that were down at this conference have said that they're going to use the book to educate younger people about what Alzheimer's is about. Because a lot of people aren't going to pick up a non-fiction book about Alzheimer's unless they're right in the throes of it.
Right.
But fiction is more of a softer approach to get to the same goal, which is to educate them. So they'll read the book, and if it's kind of not thriller, but it's hopefully a page turner, then they'll get to the end, and then they'll know something that they didn't know. And what I see when for instance, I look on Amazon and people write reviews, so many of them are either I didn't know anything about it, and thank you, or wow, that's what I went through and I'm not alone.
Total identify.
And so that sometimes brings tears to my eyes when I read some of those. Very
rewarding. You answered some of the specifics to my next question, which was going to be, you're here, won the award, you've got some things on the horizon. Anything else next that you can see if you were to write another book, or do you want to share perhaps some of the other places you're going to take the book regarding exposure or actual showings, readings, sharings, that type of thing?
Well, as far as what I'm going to write in the future, I don't know. I have a half-written thriller that
Shows pure creativity, by the way, the fact that you say that. That's wonderful.
But so I have this half-written book I have this book I was halfway through before I started this, and I may finish that. But I just want to take this to wherever it can go, and the fact that I can work with these different Alzheimer's societies, and I'm not considered a medical person by any means, but I have done a lot of research with some of the top researchers in the world. So I've done my homework, and I just want to take that and I want to bring it to a greater audience.
Yeah, and sometimes I think just I would say that it's easier for people to relate when it's not a medical researcher who's explaining the conditions or the actual effects of things. It gives it a human feel, it gives more relatability. So
Right.
kudos to you for putting
Right.
it in that platform and creating that blend somewhat in the novel.
Right, and it is written in very easy to understand language. This is not great prose.
Right.
This is written so that people can understand it in everyday language.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Wonderful job.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you.